Can you tell me who Claudette Colvin is?
Sorry, I can't.
Can you tell me who Claudette Colvin is?
I can't.
Okay.
Claudette Colvin?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with her.
Okay. Can you tell me who Claudette Colvin is?
I've never heard of her.
No, I don't recognize the name.
Who Claudette Colvin is?
I don't.
Can you tell me who Claudette Colvin is?
I cannot.
Can you tell me who Rosa Parks is?
Oh, sure. She's a major civil rights activist who was the woman who started the Montgomery bus boycott.
Rosa Parks was a hero of the civil rights movement. Refused to get up from the back of the bus. Refused to move to the back of the bus.
Yeah. Can you tell me who Rosa Parks is?
Yes, she fought for freedom. She sat on the bus and get up and then for civil rights.
Rosa Parks, African-American woman who refused to sit in the back of the bus.
Rosa Parks was a woman in the 50s who wanted to sit in the front of the bus because she was tired, and someone asked her to move to the back of the bus and she refused.
Rosa Parks, she's a historical figure. We often talk about her during February Black History Month, kind of stood up for African-American rights, women's rights, didn't give up her seat on the bus.
Can you tell me who Rosa Parks is?
She had been an activist for quite a while before, she became famous, but it was a coordinated decision that she would, on one particular day, sit in the front of the bus, on a segregated bus, when she, by law, would have had to go to the back.
In Alabama, from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s, integration was rarely permitted. Jim Crow laws were created to segregate African Americans from whites, including at drinking fountains, in public bathrooms, restaurants, schools, and on public transportation. The Jim Crow laws were supposed to be separate but equal, but resulted in less desirable facilities, inferior education, and second-class seating for African Americans. Literacy tests and residential requirements determined the right to vote, but because these were hard to achieve for African Americans, they were designed to reduce the number of African American voters, which made it harder to change such unfair laws.
Claudette Colvin was born September 5, 1939 in Montgomery, Alabama during World War II and at a time of segregation in America. Her parents were Mary Jane Gatson and C.P. Austin. When she was a few months old, she went to live with her great-uncle and aunt, and later her younger sister Delphine joined them. Claudette went to school at Booker T. Washington High, which was poor and received little funding. Claudette was smart, inquisitive, and a straight-A student. On May 17, 1954, in the case of Brown v. Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruled that segregated schools did not give African American students an equal chance for good education. When they found out that schools were going to be integrated, many students were against it, but Claudette felt that she would get a better education if the schools were integrated.
On March 2, 1955, when she was just 15 years old, Claudette climbed aboard a Montgomery City bus after school with her friends and some other classmates. As they rode through town, other white passengers boarded the bus. Once the bus was full, the bus driver called out,
"I need those seats,"
expecting Claudette and her friends to move to the back so a middle-aged white woman could sit down. While her friends did get up and stand in the back, Claudette did not. Claudette later reported,
"Rebellion had been on my mind all that day. I knew I had rights, I knew the rules, I hadn't planned it out, but my decision was built on a lifetime of nasty experiences." What were the rules and rights that Claudette was referring to? There was a state law that declared that no African American rider had to give up his or her seat unless another was available. In Claudette's situation, there were no other seats available on the bus, so she was within her rights to refuse. In addition, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, written in 1868 to secure the continued freedom of slaves, proclaims in Section 1,
"No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws."
After Claudette refused to give up her seat, the bus driver saw a police vehicle and got their attention. When the police told her to get up, she didn't fight back or shout anything profane, but repeated over and over, "It's my constitutional right." Claudette later reported that the two policemen shouted at her and referred to her as a thing, and finally grabbed her hands and pulled her off the bus. They put handcuffs on her and took her to the women's prison instead of a juvenile detention center, even though she was underage.
Claudette's great-uncle suggested that her parents contact E.D. Nixon, head of Montgomery chapter of NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which they did. Nixon then called Fred Gray, one of 2 black lawyers in Montgomery, who was just 6 months out of law school. He agreed to represent Claudette. Nixon also called 26-year-old new pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, who turned out to be none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King's efforts to seek justice for Claudette Colvin launched his political debut in the civil rights movement.
On March 18, 1955, 2 weeks after her arrest, Claudette's court case began with charges of assaulting a police officer, violating the segregation law, and disturbing the peace. After 2 weeks, Claudette was ultimately found guilty on all counts by Judge Wiley Hill. She was put on a 1-year probation and became a ward of the state. She was then released into her parents' custody. Claudette was shocked and devastated by the news. She knew that she was following the law and had not attacked the officers. She feared that her permanent record as a convicted criminal would haunt her as she applied for jobs and for college. Sometime in 1955, Claudette met an older gentleman and accidentally became pregnant. Since abortion was illegal, Claudette kept the baby, her first son Raymond, but was expelled from high school due to a rule that one could not be pregnant at school. This unfortunately ended her dreams of becoming a lawyer.
In December 1955, the Montgomery bus boycott began. It was a protest against segregation on city buses, in which African Americans refrained from riding the buses. In May of 1956, on the 159th day of the Montgomery bus boycott, and 6 weeks after the birth of Claudette's first son, the case of Browder v. Gale was heard in the U.S. District Court by 3 judges. Claudette testified in this case as the youngest plaintiff. Rosa Parks was not a plaintiff because her case was still being appealed. On June 5, 1956, the District Court ruled 2-1 that bus segregation laws were unconstitutional. On November 15, 1956, the Supreme Court upheld this ruling, which led to an end of segregation on buses.
After the U.S. District Court case, Claudette was having trouble finding work in the South because most businesses would not hire her, for fear someone would recognize her and endanger their employees and their customers. None of the activists would help her because she had given birth out of wedlock. Eventually, she moved to New York and became a live-in family caregiver while her son, Raymond, stayed in Montgomery. Finally, she came across a job in Manhattan at a Catholic nursing home where she would work for the next 36 years. In 1960, Claudette gave birth to another son, Randy. That son is now an accountant with 4 children. Raymond sadly died in 1993 at the age of 37. At 77, Claudette Colvin lives in the Bronx. In 2010, she had a biography written about her by Philip Hoos, which provided much of the material for this documentary.
Claudette did not become well known because she was an unwed teenage mother, so she was ignored by all leaders of the civil rights movement. Claudette also believes her darker skin and poorer circumstances contributed to her not being taken seriously. In addition, people in the South were ashamed that it took a teenager to stand up for her rights, and that an adult was not brave enough to do so. The final reason is because the court case, Browder v. Gale, was overshadowed by cases like Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, which desegregated schools in the South. Claudette Colvin's brave actions inspired Rosa Parks and the participants of the Montgomery bus boycott to stand up, or rather sit down, for their equal rights. This in turn helped end bus segregation and eventually brought an end to legal racial segregation. It took the brave actions of one person to start a revolution, but the coordinated efforts of many brave people to create a movement for lasting change. Claudette is a true heroine who doesn't deserve to have been forgotten. We hope this documentary will raise public awareness of Claudette Colvin's courage and impact on equal rights in our society, and will inspire courage and activism in young people today.
I knew there was somebody else, but I never knew who it was.
Yeah.
So
And
that's new, so you learn something new every day. That's
Yeah.
Did it spontaneously,
Yeah,
the way that
exactly.
we sort of learned that Rosa Parks did when that's not actually true.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Good for her. That's really brave. Yeah.
Thank you. I did not know that.
Wow. I never knew that. I thought Rosa Parks was like the first person.
It's great that you're educating people on this because it's not the first time this has probably happened. It's certainly not the